Thanks for stopping by today. Look who's here, my son, Sam. And he's in town for the holidays, and we thought we would take this opportunity to have a little chit chat with you, introduce you to him. He lives out in Los Angeles, comes to visit a few times a year, and I've been very grateful to have him around and thought this would be great to see what's on his mind in the dating world and what's going on with his friends. And what were you telling me about? A lot of your friends have the same kind of thing going on, right?
So what's happening is all my friends are getting married. It's that time. I'm 30 years old and they're getting hitched and the weddings are happening. And what I don't want to see happen is my friends invest a lot of money in a very special day, one of the most special days of their lives, and all of a sudden it goes by the blink of an eye and they missed it. They weren't even present. They don't know what happened. And they have the regret. They want to go back. I want to try and prevent that, avoid that.
You can't have that big day twice. And it's something that I've been talking about over the years. If you missed it somewhere in my episodes, I've mentioned I spent 30 years as a vocalist in a wedding band. His dad and I had a band that we ended up playing over the years, over 3,500 weddings. And many times, Sam has heard me tell stories about people not being present for that big day. And that's what made him think about me and wonder,
what advice and tips do you have for my friends to make the most of this very special day?
And I have a couple. So we're going to share some of those with you. Sam's going to interview me. That'll be fun. He's drinking out of the pig cup here. He'll answer some questions, I'll answer, and hopefully this can be useful to you, to somebody you know, to your kids, your grandchildren, yourself, anybody who's going to be planning that big day. Some stuff that you probably don't read about if you're looking up articles or hearing just one vendor talk about their specific area of expertise. So that's what's on the agenda today. We hope you'll stick around.
So I took some time over this trip home to my mother's to come up with a couple questions that I think would get her thinking about and really dive into the experiences that she's had at weddings. Again, I went along on a couple of those weddings, being the band's roadie, helping my father set up the gear, tear down, and in the middle maybe danced with the bride a little bit. But I've got a couple of questions here that I'm gonna ask my mother, and we'll see what we can get out of here. I know there's gonna be a bunch of helpful tips for all of you. So big picture here, what should people think about ahead of time when planning their wedding, just thinking about their wedding, just got engaged? What are those big picture things we want them thinking about?
Big picture and thinking about ahead of time. I would say to start early. So way ahead of time, I suggest that you just put this in mind that as long as you're at these weddings of your friends, that you're paying attention with the mindset that you will be having a party one day and trying to figure out not only what you do want, but what you don't want. Back in the day when we were booking the band, people used to book us a year and a half ahead of time. I don't know what your time frame is now for the vendors you'll be dealing with, but I would suggest that you find out ahead of time. Know before you're engaged, know what the time frame is for people whose work you enjoy, which leads me to the fact that you should already be paying attention. Even if you're not engaged, start looking at the flowers, start checking out what the photographer's doing while you're dancing or eating or watching the ceremony. If there's a videographer, what is he capturing? Is he getting in the way, or have you barely noticed him because he's so unobtrusive? Is there a planner who seems to be driving the bride crazy? You'll avoid this person later on. So I think early on, as well as doing some research online and having your wedding Pinterest, and also knowing the time frame that these people are booking, so that when you do get engaged, you don't wait 6 months to find out that you would have had to have booked a year in advance. Get a feel for the people that you're interested in, what their timetable looks like. And also keep in mind that having more options and more choices just makes everything a lot easier. It's what I tell my kids in so many different scenarios. Freedom is having choices, and you want to allow yourself to have as many choices as possible when that day does come that you are planning your big day.
Early on, everyone's got their opinion about your wedding, but what does it make sense to listen to? What is helpful? We're gonna talk about that right here. Mom, what do you think?
Yeah, it's really hard. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and everybody has an opinion, and it is kind of tough to figure out how much leeway you should give to the people you care about when you're trying to plan your big day. I think keep in mind that these people aren't trying to be controlling. A lot of times these are people who've already been through planning and organizing and throwing a big party, a wedding. But also you do need to maintain some type of control. I think the best way to navigate this, in my experience, is to delegate. Though this area is mine, you know that you don't want any input on that. You've known for a long time how you want this part to go down, but you aren't certain about something. So make use of people and their opinions where you can. Give them the respect of listening, and then of course, like everything else, especially with parents, give them that respect, take their opinions into account, and then do what you want to do. I think that's how it works.
When it comes to a wedding, there are tons of vendors. You've got photographer, videographer, you've got wedding planner, you've got chefs, you've got cooks, you've got a maid, you've got a
band.
nurse, you've got a band, especially a band. Get a band and a DJ. How do you know who to choose? Who to hire for these things? You know that you need to find people you can trust. Who do you choose?
Well, first of all, you've been paying attention for some time now, and that's going to give you an idea of maybe at least a vendor or two that you might have interest in hiring for your wedding. But also ask for recommendations from friends. Ask other vendors. If you hire your band, they may know a photographer that they absolutely love working with, who they think is so easy to get along with and isn't intrusive, and everybody enjoys working with him, and vice versa. I had so many other vendors, wedding planners, photographers, videographers, and the places at these country clubs and hotels that we were playing who would recommend us because they knew we were professional, did a great job, and kept the people dancing. So I think beyond just your friend group or what you've noticed as you've been paying attention at parties, ask each of the vendors if they have a list of recommendations, because very often they do. Recognize that there may be some kickbacks here. Of course, I was always appreciative when a hotel would recommend my band to potential brides and grooms ahead of time, but often not. So I would not worry about that in the long run, but don't be offended if you find out. You'll do your own footwork and go check out this person's work, either hearing a musical group somewhere or seeing a bunch of pictures of the flowers that they've done for other parties. But don't be afraid of asking vendors for their recommendations as well. And mostly, as you suggested, is that you want to find people who seem very professional to you, beyond whatever their beautiful flowers look like or how great they are at mixing music or making songs sound just like the original artist. If they're not professional on their day, or they don't even show up because they're not true professionals, they're hard to work with, they're bossy, that professionalism goes a long way. So make sure that everything leading up to your day, all your interactions with these people, is showing you that they are really great at handling the business of their art. Not just creative types, but they're also great business people, because you really need people that you can trust on that day to do what they've been hired to do without much interaction from you. You want to be able to hire these people and then forget about them so you can be a guest at your own party.
All right, day of the wedding, ceremony happens first. What tips do you have to make the most of that time for the bride and the groom, the family, everyone attending?
The things that I really loved about some ceremonies, things that some had and others did not, was I loved when there was a little bit of music playing, some type of music. First, I guess we have to point out that ceremonies can take place at different types of venues. It can be in a church, it can also be in the hotel, it can be outdoors somewhere. So the one thing that I've always thought made a ceremony really special was when there was some beautiful soft music playing as guests were arriving, and also making sure secondarily that your people who are recording this for posterity have been instructed to not be in everybody's face. You don't want to have people watching you walk down the aisle with a photographer 3 feet from you backing up the whole way. So talking these things through, asking great questions of the people you hire, and making sure that your ceremony is not only going to be captured by whoever is videotaping or taking photos, but also that there's some beautiful music, that people know where they're going, that people are there to tell them where to go when it's ended. And other than that, I think ceremonies are pretty simple. Most of the pressure on that one is on you up front and keeping yourself together, which is important. And I would suggest that during your ceremony, you try to, at that point, focus, ground yourself, and truly be present, because I know for so many people that part is over and they're looking forward to the party afterwards, but they barely remember their own ceremony because there were nerves. It's the first thing to happen, so there's some anxiety around that, and there's so much going on to take in that you forget to literally make sure you are there, present in the moment, and focused on your partner and the vows that you're sharing with one another. So that would be my other huge tip for your ceremony.
All right, ceremony's over. A lot of great tips there. Thank you, Mom. What about as we move to the reception, really the fun, the meat of the wedding? How do we make the most of that event? How do we see everybody, say hi to everybody, and still enjoy ourselves and dance and live in that moment?
Well, again, I think you really do have to remember to stay present. And if you've really done the work ahead of time, the lead work, had the communication with the people who are helping you organize this event, you really should be able to relax and be a guest at your own party, to have a good time. You have to walk around and say hello to everybody. That's part of it. You skipped over actually the cocktails. And I did want to point out that I truly think that is, I know that photos have to be done, but that is still a really great time to actually converse with your guests, because do you want to be talking to them while you're dancing? No. I really have noticed that a couple seems to be really enjoying themselves when they're part of their own cocktail hour. And also it keeps you from having to connect with people later on during the reception, especially later on when people are leaving and they feel they need to connect with you before they take off. I'd prefer you spend a little time with them earlier on, and then we can talk about it upcoming here. Maybe a way to not be spending the other half of your evening after dinner saying goodbye to everybody as they start to leave at different times, right? Everybody doesn't stay till the end. People have different commitments or ages. Grandparents might leave earlier, people who have a child at home. So you don't want to spend your time saying hello and goodbye. I think if you do spend some time, though, conversing early on, that kind of does your duty of making sure that you honor all of your guests and have an opportunity to thank them for being there. And then we're at the party now. So hopefully you're just enjoying yourself, having fun, and talking to people and dancing and eating and being merry. Because if you've hired all those people you trust, you really shouldn't have to have much interaction with them at all. You've hired professionals to take over so you don't have to worry or oversee the situation. They should be doing everything you've previously discussed and communicated, and you should just be having a great time.
Mom, there's so many people that attend a wedding. I mean, I know Rachel, my sister, just had a wedding in our backyard with, 50 people a couple years ago. Other people are gonna have hundreds. What are the tips to navigate that? How do you talk to them all, say hi to them all, say bye to them all?
Well, Rachel's thing was a little bit different because we didn't have true dancing, so there was a lot of time for conversation. But this is what I was referring to. The fact that you spend all this time, whether you have a line at the reception where people go through the line and say hello to you and congratulate you, whether you've spoken to them at the cocktail hour or whether you're just making rounds at the table. But I have never really enjoyed watching a party where I see the bride and groom not eat their dinner, but where they go table to table and greet all their guests. Some people have traveled from near or far. Then there's a dance, a little bit of dancing, and then the bride and groom are spending the rest of their evening saying goodbye to everybody. So my helpful tip here, and you can plan this however you want. I really don't have a definitive answer to this, but I would encourage you to think about something you might be able to say in your speech where you welcome everyone and thank them for coming. Somehow give them permission to leave without saying goodbye, if you can manage that. I think that would be a really big gift to not just yourself, but to them, because they have to track you down. You're in the middle of a dance. I see the bride and groom all the time hugging people goodbye. I'm like, can they just have fun and dance? This might be their favorite song. And here they are watching people carrying their flowers out and saying goodbye. I wouldn't want to know when everybody's leaving. And if you feel the same way, perhaps you could say something in your welcome speech like, We appreciate you all being here so much, and we hope throughout the evening we get a chance to talk to all of you. But we wanted to let you know that we really hate goodbyes. So when you leave, please don't feel like you have to track us down and let us know. I mean, even this feels awkward too, but you can just let people know that we hope you can all stay till the end, but feel free to slip out when you must, and we'll look forward to connecting with you when we're back from our honeymoon. It's tough, but some of you are more clever than I am, I'm sure, but I just have always felt badly for the bride and groom having their fun interrupted to spend the second half of their evening or afternoon saying goodbye to everybody that they just said hello to.
So great tips about how to handle some of the guests. Mom, what about the people that we've hired? The florist, the videographer, the photographer, and that wedding band. How do we handle that?
Well, the florist is easy. You've made that planning a long time ago. And I think the only thing I would mention that you might want to keep in mind is that once you're done with the flowers, what do you do with them? I know sometimes brides and grooms will have different ways of guaranteeing that somebody from each group or table is chosen to take home a centerpiece or the flowers, or they have them out on a table as you leave. And I think that whether there's something under your plate or your chair, or they make an announcement of whoever's birthday is closest to this date, that person would be able to take home the floral arrangement from the table. Those are great ideas, but also donating the flowers. There are some different organizations that will pick up your flowers actually, and they can take them to hospitals or to the homes for the elderly. There's also a company, let me check my notes real quick. They send them to hospice care, children's hospitals, nursing homes for the elderly. So if you hadn't thought about that, make sure you look into some of the options of what you might do with your flowers once you're done with them. For this, the photographer, if there's any special pictures, make sure to let him know ahead of time that you needed a group shot of this or that. They'll have a list of what you want. I think one of my main concerns with photographers is that I don't like to see a photographer constantly dragging the couple away from the fun. So have some communication around this. How much of your time will they require during the reception? Maybe during dinner, they can do a couple group shots and pull people from the table by making an announcement. If you want your sorority friends all in a photo, they can do that during dinner. But constantly pulling a bride and groom away for photographs was another thing that always made me feel like you've taken them out of the moment and not allowing them to truly be a part of their own party that they've planned for so long. So you've hired professionals, you've had these conversations, that should all be going great. As far as your band, I would say you've hired a professional there too. So if by any chance, I've got some tips for you. I'm sure you're going to ask me more about the band, but one of them would be to, if there's any problem with volume with the musicians or a band or a DJ, that you don't make a big sign about it while you're out on the dance floor, that you go over and discreetly, or better yet, have somebody else go let them know that they need to turn it up or down, that the volume isn't quite right. Because there's nothing worse than seeing a bride out there going, turn it up or down, or like that. So you still have the ability to communicate with the people you hire on that day should you need to, but hopefully you don't need to too much. And then, of course, you'd be communicating with them even less if you hire a planner. And that person you may need to be communicating with because they will come and ask you things that they can't handle on their own. If you've never thought about having a planner or don't want to spend the money for a planner, a friend will suffice. Your friend that's super organized and perhaps wants to give that organizational skill or gift of theirs to you as their wedding gift. That's always something nice that I've seen people do. Your type A friend, you have them show up and just be the liaison between you and the people you've hired. That seems to work out really well for people who don't want a professional who's going to go make sure everything is on time. A friend can be a little bit more laid back, but if they're in the know and they've been cued into everything, they make a really great wedding planner from my experience.
Mom, the music, this is your area of expertise. What insider tips do you have for us? Give it to us. Come on.
As to the wedding band, I would remind you, I guess at this point, I think the music will have already been chosen. Maybe I'll start there. Choosing music for your wedding. I suggest that you do not go in and select every single song you want played for the event. I used to have people who would say, so you do how many songs in a night? I'd say, actually, it's round figures. It's between 34 and 37 songs. And they'd say, okay, so I'll send you a list of like 35 songs. And I'd say, no, what I really would love for you to do is pick 15 songs that you absolutely must have. 15 songs that you would love to have played, but they're second choice after the first 15, and then allow me to pick and choose from that second 15 and things I know will absolutely be needed, fill in, and make sure that I can have the opportunity to give everyone a chance to be out on the dance floor. So I didn't want anybody controlling my entire playlist because they hired me not just as the talent, but for my experience of knowing what was going to work and make sure that everybody had a chance to have fun at this party. And everybody would reach out that following week and say that was the best band we've ever heard. I didn't want to just simply be playing for one small group at the party. You want to be entertaining all your guests. So that's part of why you choose somebody who's a professional. And more importantly, that's why you trust the people that you've hired once you get to that day. If you think they're playing a little too much of something, you could have a friend or somebody go up and ask, are you going to keep doing this? And typically, if they'd ask me, I'm like, no. A Frank Sinatra song and the big band stuff is going to go early in the evening because I'm thinking that perhaps grandma and grandpa and auntie and uncle will be leaving before the end of the night. So that music would disappear and we'd get more into who remains and who needs to be on the dance floor. Another great tip for the band is that I would always tell people, I'm not aiming to fill your room with dance music. I'm aiming to make the dance floor a nice loud volume that makes you want to dance. So if you are concerned that there are people who won't appreciate the music being loud, seat them around the perimeter away from the dance floor so that I'm not aiming speakers right at, Auntie Essie's head. I'm not sure if everybody thinks about that, or to let you know. So I'm sharing with you that that's definitely something I always recommended because I'm thinking all the moving parts, even though I'm just a musician. And that shows that I was the professional who was taking all my experience from all the weddings into account and noticing that if grandma in my first year of being a band leader had to be moved somewhere, I made note of that. And that was just part of my experience and my professionalism.
Okay, Mom, you and I always talk about gratitude. Where does that come into the day? How do we bring gratitude into this experience?
Well, if you are a person like we are who is constantly trying to tap into our gratitude and greet each day as a brand new opportunity to be grateful for, I would just say on this special day when there is so much going on, so many balls in the air and so much pressure that all of this work has culminated in one day, just to take moments for yourself. Set some time aside for you and your partner, or for even separately, any moments that you can schedule even ahead of time to grab some solitude and check in with one another and check in with yourself and to be present, to be in the moment. I think the biggest loss of these big parties with all this planning is that people don't take the opportunity to truly be present and enjoy all the work that they've put into this. So I want to make sure that you are going to schedule in some moments to be grateful, to ground yourself and look around and appreciate all those coming together, all these people who have come together to make your day so special and start you off as a couple on the right track with all their support, their love. All these people are there for you. So be grateful that you've chosen such fabulous people to help you in this situation, the people you've hired, the friends that you have delegated some responsibilities to, and of course your family who supported you through all of this.
I was reading a bridal magazine on the plane over here. Okay, just kidding. But I've seen a bunch of them. I know my friends have some of them. What about any other books or resources that people can look to?
Sam, I don't want to answer that question because I can't think of anything right now. But I did think of one more thing I wanted to talk about with music. And that is that one of my, I've done all different ethnicities of weddings, right? Big Italian weddings and Greek weddings and Indian weddings and Jewish weddings. And one of my favorite things as far as the scheduling of dancing is at a Jewish wedding, they typically have dancing in between courses of dinner. A very standard wedding schedule is the ceremony. Oh, I do have something to mention about that too. Is the ceremony, an hour of cocktails, an hour and a half of dinner, and then 3 hours of dancing. But at a lot of Jewish weddings, they will have the full band playing instrumental music when food is set down so that there is no vocals while you're talking and conversing over dinner. But when they start picking the plates up or are serving still, they will allow for dancing. And it's usually not the big lively stuff, but more moderate type songs, kind of easing your way into it, which is what I always did. I always like to ease people into the music, right? Start with some of the oldies but goodies and then keep mixing some slow songs in and then just kind of building to the big party frenzy. So that's an option to you. When you do that, the other thing that it allows for is that the bride and groom can be introduced into the room. First time, help me welcome Mr. and Mrs. to the dance floor to dance their first dance. And I think that's kind of cool because it starts more of the festivities right away. So it's something to think about if you have the opportunity to have dance music during dinner. You need a professional. You need somebody who's going to watch what's going on with the servers when they start setting plates out, when they start taking them off. But if you can have dancing then, you could already have taken care of your first dance and your introduction at the same time. The one thing I forgot to mention was that please help your guests out by letting them know how much time there is between the ceremony and the reception. If you have a lot of time between when the ceremony ends and when cocktails begin, people who are out of town, are they near the hotel? I think maybe I'm saying when you're planning this, take into account you really don't want to have a gap between, except travel time, between the end of your ceremony and cocktail hour. That time obviously could be used for photographs, but where do your guests go if you have 3 hours? If they're from out of town and they're staying nearby, then certainly they get to go to a room. But if they're people who have driven 50 minutes, an hour in town to get to your party, if it's not a beach wedding or in a hotel or a outdoor venue, where do these people go? So that's just something I wanted to point out, that you keep in mind that gaps between those two can be awkward if it's not planned well. So don't forget to take a look at that when planning the outline of times for your party.
Like I mentioned, I've got 8 to 10 weddings to attend this year. How do people stand out and be different? What kind of things can they do to make that day extra special for their loved ones as well as for themselves? Any tips on like sweet tables or...
No, I've got you here.
Okay.
Sam is well aware that sweet tables are my downfall. So I think it's just special. All those thousands of weddings. A lot of people don't want to eat the wedding cake. It doesn't have to be fancy, but if there's a coffee service and some sweets, I mean, I've seen super elaborate ones be laid out while the dancing's going on. But I do always love a sweet table. And the kids always loved it because I would bring home a little something from that sweet table for them at the end of the night. The kitchen help were always very, very nice in giving me a few pieces for my kids at home, whom I would always wake when I got home at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning for a fun little sweet party. But different parties have different length of time, so I've also seen where people have served breakfast. If this party's going till 1 a.m. and you ate at 7 or 8 o'clock, there's just been hours of dancing. I've seen people bring in pizza. I've seen people bring in hot dogs. I've seen people bring in snacks or full breakfast. So that was something that was certainly memorable to me. I'm a food lover. But I think having great musical entertainment makes a huge difference. Spend time going to hear live who will be at your party. Don't take somebody's word for it or hear a recording or watch a video. Go see somewhere how this person or band interacts with a group at a live event. I think that's really important. It's about energy. And people would always come out, and you have to have great manners, right? You can't be standing in the room if there's somebody else's wedding. But I'd certainly had hundreds of people show up and be out in the lobby and watching the group, hearing what songs were playing and what was filling the dance floor. They'd stay for about 4 or 5 songs. Occasionally I'd have somebody without great manners who would stay for a whole set and a half. I'd have to go out and say something. You weren't invited to this party. If you have questions, you can call me. Also, don't take up the musician or the DJ's break if they were to have a break. That's for them to use the restroom and take care of any other communications. But to stop in and hear a few songs, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And making it memorable, really that's about you making it authentic to you. And I think that is the best advice, that you should follow your gut and truly not try to make it like everything you've seen, but make it uniquely yours, whatever that looks like. It should feel like it's a celebration of you two particular people, and in any way that you can personalize it and make it your own. Be brave, be bold, and don't let a planner or somebody else's great wedding convince you that it has to be one way. There are no rules around this. So make it your own, and that will be what makes it stand out and be special. And also, if you've been planning and paying attention, as long as I've told you, you will have made some great choices, hired some great people to work with, have less problems because you've made sure they're all good at what they do. And that alone can help make it a great party that is unique and special.
Can we recap this a little bit? What are the biggest takeaways here? Any last tips or comments that you want to share? What final thoughts do you have for our viewers here today?
Yeah. I think I want to remind you there is a saying, and it's a Jewish saying, and it translates to man plans, God laughs, which means that you can plan to the last detail every second of this day of yours. And you can be guaranteed that it is never going to go exactly as you planned. That's not how life works. And that's great to know that. And it's great to know it because being paired with another person is unpredictable, and so is everything in life. Something will not go as planned. And what your job is to be flexible and not let it ruin your moment, not let it take you out of this event, this celebration. I want you to laugh. If something goes wrong, what I see the other day, it was a video of the cake literally hitting the floor, and the groom went over and handed his bride a spoon, and they sat down on the floor. That was perfect. It could be anything, honestly. I've seen so many things go wrong after 3,500 weddings. Some were big, some were small, but I've also seen brides in the bathroom crying over little things and ruining their mood over something that really nobody has control over. That's just how life is. You can't plan it down to every second. And there have been plenty of times where the band was supposed to start at one time, but dinner was running late. But that was because speeches were running late. But that's because things are not going to always be perfect. And accepting that, knowing it in advance, and planning for that mentally will take you a really long way and allow you to have fun and celebrate your day as you should, with a positive attitude and being forward looking, not crying over spilled cake. Well, Sam and I hope that you found that interesting and or helpful, and that my years and years can in some way make your day even more special. And we wish you all the very best on your wedding. And if you need some advice on how to have a fantastic relationship and how to set yourself up for long-term happiness and relationship success, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel because there's lots of episodes about that as well. You can skip right over the dating stuff and go directly to the relationship conversations. Thank you for being here. Wish you all the best. much love, much happiness, and until next time, have a good one.
Wow. I am
Sweating.
This is some good info. Holy cow. I'm going to get married tomorrow.
Wait till you find the person.
All right, yeah, I should start dating.
Find your person
I'll,
first.
I'll start dating it first.